So this was the big news story coming out of Impact Wrestling last night. No, it's not Tony Khan's return to Impact Wrestling programming. No, it's not Steve Cutler making his Impact Wrestling debut in the form of a vignette. It was the big announcement right at the end of Impact Wrestling on Access TV last night, and that is Impact Wrestling is finally welcoming back live fans to their programming, because for the first time in 16 months since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, live fans will be in attendance for an Impact Wrestling show when the promotion presents Slammiversary on Saturday, July 17, 2021. Yes, very exciting. Can't wait for this one. It's about time. I don't want to say it's overdue. I think July's the month, isn't it? July's the month that I guess pro wrestling fully returns in whatever the new normal of it's going to be. Obviously, WWE returns to touring, so does AEW, and now it looks like so does Impact Wrestling, because live fans are returning at Slammiversary this year. It just makes what is already a massive event even more exciting, and I, for one, just cannot wait. I cannot wait. I'm so excited about it now. Tickets went on sale today, Friday, June 4 at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and already they have sold out, by the way. We'll touch on that in a second. Now, a limited number of fans will be allowed to attend the event, with each ticket being part of Impact's new Super Premium VIP ticket plan. Now, full details on what this includes can be found via the official press release, which I do have in front of me. This is what it has to say, quote, "Welcome back, fans. Slammiversary pay-per-view on July 17 marks the first Impact Wrestling show with fans in attendance in 16 months. Welcome back, Impact Wrestling fans. Impact Wrestling will allow a limited number of fans to attend Slammiversary pay-per-view live in person at Skyway Studios in Nashville, Tennessee on Saturday, July 17. Now, as I mentioned, Slammiversary tickets will go on sale this Friday, today, June 14, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, obviously 10 a.m. Eastern Time rather, but if you're seeing this video, they've already sold out, unfortunately. Now, due to the limited number of tickets that will be available for the event, all tickets will be part of Impact's new Super Premium VIP ticket plan. Every seat is on the arena floor, ringside, and comes with a bundle of perks that have never been offered in wrestling history. Now, here are some of the perks that all ticket buyers will receive in addition to their seat. This includes a commemorative ticket with lanyard, the official Slammiversary t-shirt, the official Slammiversary mounted poster, a post-show commemorative photo ringside or on the entrance ramp with the actual official Impact Wrestling X Division Championship, very exciting, a swatch of the official match-used Slammiversary canvas. Fans will have the chance to see canvas be cut immediately after the pay-per-view, Impact branded swag, complimentary water, soft drinks, chips, candy bars, and some of Robert Irvin's Fit Crunch protein bars, courtesy of Robert Irvin and, of course, Gail Kim. This is what Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore of Impact Wrestling had to say, quote, only a quote from Scott D'Amore as well, which is very interesting. He said, quote, "We have waited over a year to say these three words. Welcome back, fans. We know Slammiversary will be an amazing event with title defenses, jaw-dropping excitement, breathtaking moves, ... and now fans. I speak for everyone at Impact Wrestling when I say we are thrilled to welcome back our fans. Impact is going to deliver an amazing night of action in front of a thunderous roar of fans for the first time since early March 2020 at the two-night A-Town Beatdown in Atlanta. Impact Wrestling will continue to follow all state and local safety protocols with the limited number of fans admitted to the venue." Now, frankly, as I mentioned, Impact Wrestling kept this one very close to the vest. They very much did. Now, as I mentioned, they announced, what's the time now? So they announced maybe an hour or so ago at the time of recording, they announced that Slammiversary is officially sold out. This is what the tweet has to say, quote, "Hashtag Slammiversary is officially sold out. We're looking forward to seeing all of you on July 17th in Nashville. And if you missed out, stay tuned for details on other opportunities to attend Slammiversary soon." So they might be possibly doing some competitions as well. We'll have to wait and see about that. But how exciting is that? Slammiversary, fans in attendance. What was already a massive show just got exponentially bigger. Now, it's interesting because when I was planning out what I was going to talk about today, I knew I was going to talk about Steve Cutler coming into Impact Wrestling and those vignettes and some of the things that happened last night on Impact. One of the things I was going to talk about, ironically, was Slammiversary and fans. This was before the announcement was made, because at the time that Impact Wrestling was on last night when I was watching it, there was a tweet by Sean Ross Sapp. Now, Sean Ross Sapp recently, he's, for me, the top of the top. He's just been unbelievably accurate every single time, just nailing it. Fightful will do incredible work, fact-checked, just good journalism. That's they just do good journalism. Specifically, Sean Ross Sapp, but everyone over there at Fightful just does good journalism. He was asked by, I think it was a fan on social media, who basically said, we know that fans are returning for WWE in July. We know that fans are returning to AEW in July as well. They've already returned, but certainly in a touring basis, going city to city, state to state. What's the situation with Impact Wrestling? And he said, as far as, earlier on in May, I don't think we're going to have fans back at any time soon for Impact, because I haven't heard anything. That could change, though. And obviously it changes at the end of Impact Wrestling last night. So obviously it's exciting, because we know at this point it's not even up for debate. It's without question. Something we used to always say prior to the pandemic, wasn't it, is that pro wrestling is nothing without fans. WWE like to say it all the time. You are the real decision makers. You are the one who decide who get over, get pushed, rise to the top. You're the one who decides who wins and loses and all that kind of stuff. It's cliche, but it is true. And we've realized that pro wrestling has all these different characters. Pro wrestling has all of these different characters, these gimmicks, these professional wrestlers. But arguably, the most important and consistent character is the audience, is the fans that are there. They are what makes wrestling so great to watch. The reaction, the audience participation, the emotional investment, the boos, the cheers, the drama, that all comes from the fans. When you had to remove fans, and we had to move to this pandemic era of professional wrestling on the closed sets, it just was so cold and so emotionless. And it's a bit like pro wrestling is almost a bit of illusion. It comes from the history of pro wrestling, comes from the carnivals, right? And it's almost, that's why they say it's a work. You're working the crowd. You're fooling the crowd into believing this is real. And it's a bit like if you perceive pro wrestling as a magic trick, when you take the crowd away, it's no longer magic anymore. The illusion disappears, and you see it for what it is. You see the choreographed nature of it, and it's more difficult to lose yourself in it. And don't get me wrong, I think every pro wrestling company over the course of the last 18 months or so has done as good a job as they can in putting on these shows during the pandemic when it's been difficult, coming up with compelling storylines, matches, cinematic matches, different ways of presenting pro wrestling. But pro wrestling has worked for over 100 years, or nearly 100 years, however long it's been at this point. It's worked because of crowds. It's worked because of audience participation. So getting it back to that point for Impact Wrestling is so exciting. It's so exciting. And look, Slammiversary last year was the biggest event that Impact Wrestling did last year in every sense of the imagination. Slammiversary was trending worldwide. I mean, that's for Impact Wrestling being the small company that they are nowadays is a big deal. To be trending worldwide during Slammiversary was a huge accomplishment for them. They were obviously trending in the United States. It was the biggest buy rate that they did all year. It was their most successful pay-per-view. Obviously, the record was smashed this year with Impact Wrestling Rebellion. But Slammiversary last year was a ginormous success. It did a better buy rate than Hard to Kill, a better buy rate than even Bound for Glory later on in the year. And Bound for Glory, obviously, traditionally, is Impact Wrestling's biggest show of the year. Bound for Glory is Impact's equivalent to the WrestleMania and the Starrcade. It's their signature premier event. Slammiversary was far bigger last year. Now, why was it bigger? Why was it so much more of a success, especially during some of the early stages of the pandemic last year? The reason why was because of the excitement and the mystery and the intrigue that surrounded it with these WWE releases. It was the WWE releases and discussion, hype, teases about former Impact Wrestling stars returning, new stars coming over to Impact, whether that's the Good Brothers, whether that's Eric Young, whether that's EC3, whether that's Heath, whether that's Brian Myers, whether that's even Deonna Purrazzo when she came in a bit earlier and won the Impact Knockouts Championship at Slammiversary. All of that and all of the hype, all of the intrigue and all of the drama that came with these WWE releases and Impact Wrestling doing a really successful job in marketing this event, getting hype around this event, selling pay-per-view buys when they couldn't sell tickets. They did a fantastic job, and because of that, the buy rate was incredibly high because of the drama, because of the intrigue last year. Now, obviously, we know the same things happened this year when it comes to the WWE releases in April, but obviously, we're not going to get any of the names that were released earlier this week at Slammiversary in July because of the 90-day non-compete clause, but the same things happened as it did last year. in the sense that we've had talents been released by WWE back in April. Obviously, their 90-day non-compete clause expires right before Slammiversary. It's like 3 or 4 days or something like that before Slammiversary on July 17. There was even a rumor as well, wasn't there, that Impact Wrestling purposely moved Slammiversary to that July 17 date to ensure that they could have some of these former WWE stars debut at the event as well, in the same vein that they did last year. Obviously, we've seen all of the teasers by Impact Wrestling as well, hyping up some of these former Impact Wrestling stars that were released by WWE earlier this April. Obviously, they've hyped up some names that maybe weren't released by WWE, but were with New Japan and have made appearances in Impact Wrestling in the past. They've also hyped up names that have never even made appearances for Impact Wrestling at all. Obviously, they've teased the likes of Samoa Joe. They've teased the Iconics, Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. They've teased the Forgotten Sons. They've teased Daniel Bryan. They've teased Okada. They've teased Naito. They've teased everyone that they can possibly tease, and they've done a good job doing it. And the thing to look at it, in the same vein, if you look at last year and you try and learn the lessons from last year as to what Impact presented last year, a lot of the names that Impact Wrestling teased last year, they did deliver on. We saw Eric Young teases. Eric Young was there. We saw EC3 teases. EC3 was there. We saw Good Brothers teases. They signed with Impact Wrestling the day of Slammiversary last year. At least it was officially revealed at that point. All of these names... Brian Myers, they teased as well. He showed up. I don't know if they teased Heath. I can't recall if they did, but he showed up as well. The majority of the names that they did tease did show up. Obviously, there were some names that didn't, whether they were aces and eights, etc. The character of Super Eric was teased. He didn't show up, but they were red herrings. So one could argue, given the relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, we could see some New Japan names show up, so maybe some big ones show up. That's a possibility. Obviously, some of the former WWE stars that were released are going to show up. There's a lot of history there, whether it's Chelsea Green, whether it's Samoa Joe, whether it's Mickie James, whether it's the Iconics. Obviously, Steve Cutler made his Impact Wrestling debut last night. Who's to say that Wesley Blake doesn't join as well? He was one of the names that was released in April too, so... that was big anyway. Now we have fans there as well. It takes it from here and just moves it up to here. So if we were going to get a good buy rate, if we were going to get a good number, if we were going to get some hype and some buzz around Slammiversary, we were getting it anyway. They've just doubled it overnight. They've doubled it by having these fans in attendance. Now, again, they've said a limited number. I don't know how many that is. It wouldn't be a lot anyway. Even if it was full capacity, it wouldn't be a ton anyway. Given that it's a small space, there's no doubt about that. It's hardly an open space. I really don't know how many they'll be able to get in. Frankly, even if it's... I don't even know how many they would get in. Even if it was, say, 20 or 30, that would be a big deal. Because it would add the atmosphere. Because it's such a small enclosed space, you only need a small amount of people to actually get some atmosphere going. So I don't know how many tickets it will be. Obviously, they've sold it out already, so I can't imagine there's loads. Again, it's a small space. Again, it depends on, vaccinations, depends on social distancing, depends on, again, local states' guidelines, health and safety protocols and guidelines. Impact Wrestling haven't said, but frankly, just having some energy, just having some fans in there makes it a really big deal. So obviously, great news. Super, super excited. They've already sold out and fans are returning. It's about time. So we can be very excited about that. A couple of things I did want to talk about now that we're on the road to Slammiversary and some of the big announcements coming out of Impact Wrestling last night. There are a ton of matches announced for Against All Odds, because Against All Odds, of course, is rapidly approaching its next weekend. So we will be doing a watch along for Against All Odds. It only feels like a couple of weeks ago we were doing one for Impact Under Siege, but we'll be doing one for Against All Odds here on the channel. We'll also be doing, obviously, a post-show reaction stream as well. I think we had a real good number of people tune in and enjoy the watch along and reaction stream we did last time. So if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Bottom right hand corner, click the notification bell. You'll be notified next weekend when we go live for the watch along and for the reaction stream. Very excited for Against the Odds. Got some massive matches announced for that show. One being the #1 contenders match for the Impact X Division Championship. We've got Petey Williams, Trey Miguel, Ace Austin, Chris Bay, and Rohit Raju. Obviously, the winner will be facing the X Division champion Josh Alexander after the just unbelievable, incredible 60-minute Iron Man match. I mean, just incredible, absolutely fantastic. The entire locker room came to ringside to watch the conclusion of the match on Impact last night. Both men were commended by Scott D'Amore for their performance backstage after the match. I mentioned previously, we did a video today speaking about this, and it's good to point out here that Impact Wrestling have major plans for the X Division in general, but certainly the X Division Championship, in the sense that they're trying to elevate it to, I think the analogy used was that it was ECW's Television Championship and World Heavyweight Championship in the late 1990s, early 2000s, when Rob Van Dam was the ECW Television Champion, and essentially they want it to get to the level where the Impact X Division Championship is on the same level as the Impact World Championship, which for me, as a huge advocate of the X Division in general, I think is very, very smart, and just because it's such a selling point of Impact Wrestling. But also, if Kenny Omega is going to have a long championship reign as the Impact World Champion, it makes sense, doesn't it, to elevate to the X Division to a level where if Kenny Omega isn't at Impact for a period of time for whatever reason, the X Division can step up and already be a selling point of the show anyway. Plus, it puts over Josh Alexander to a main event level for eventually him to challenge maybe an Omega or maybe a Moose, maybe whoever, to eventually win the Impact World Championship. So I'm a big advocate, and I'm really happy to hear that news. So it's going to be interesting because Josh Alexander, of course, considers himself the top guy in the company and is willing to face anyone. This was on Impact last night. Chris Bay heard that and immediately interjected, asking Scott D'Amore for a match. P.T. Williams then took exception to this, saying that Josh promised him an opportunity first. Ace Austin and Trey McGowan then joined in while Scott D'Amore slipped away and let them argue. It was then later announced that we would have this number one contenders match at Against All Odds. Like with any X Division match at the moment, I think it's potentially going to steal the show. I mean, look at the talent in that match. I mean, Pete Williams, Trey McGowan, Ace Austin, Chris Bay, Rohit Raju. I mean, anyone can win that match. Anyone can win that match, and the feud against Josh Alexander or the eventual match against Josh Alexander is going to be incredible. It just is. One would assume that the winner of this match will probably face Josh Alexander at Slammiversary. For me, that kind of rules out Ace Austin because I think they've kind of already done that. Obviously, when they had Josh Alexander win the X Division Championship in the first place, I know it was a triple threat match, but it feels like it's kind of been done. I mentioned before Pete Williams versus Josh Alexander interests me because I think there's a story to be told around the Canadian Destroyer and the previously broken neck of Josh Alexander. Is that a Slammiversary feud? I think that's debatable considering the push that the X Division Championship is getting. I mean, it depends what they want to do. Do they want to do something? I mean, if you wanted to do something really big and really bold at Slammiversary, especially with fans in attendance, who's to say that someone doesn't win this match, maybe a Trey McGowan, and they do this match on Impact, and then actually they go, tell you what, all of these guys, plus Josh Alexander, let's do something big for the return of fans at Slammiversary. Let's have Ultimate X. Then you have all of these guys in the same match for that X Division Championship. How does Josh Alexander fare in a match that is completely out of his wheelhouse, but obviously was made famous for the X Division? That's interesting. So I'm going to be doing predictions closer to the time because I don't feel I'm ready to commit to who I think is going to win that one next. That one's certainly interesting. Another match announced was W. Morrissey versus Rich Swann. Now, last night, Rich Swann and W. Morrissey both asked Scott D'Amore for a singles match against one another, a request which was later granted later on in the show. The match, however, never got started as W. Morrissey attacked Rich Swann during his entrance. Security then came out to protect Rich Swann, but the big man couldn't be stopped. Willie Mack had to come out with a steel chair to save Rich Swann. Now, obviously, this feud's been going on for a while. Obviously, W. Morrissey defeated Willie Mack at Under Siege, and then Rich Swann made the save, but W. Morrissey's just been dominating people, destroying people, and to be honest, I think that probably continues. I think that probably continues here because, let's face it, W. Morrissey is getting the big monster push, and how do you get the big monster over? Having defeat the previous world champion is a big deal. I'm just not sure if I see Rich Swann winning this one. I think W. Morrissey, obviously Impact have massive plans for him. What those plans are, I don't know. One could argue, where does W. Morrissey go after this? Who does he go after? I don't see him challenging Kenny Omega soon, but one could argue again, what other Impact names does he go up against? Maybe Eddie Edwards? Is Eddie Edwards even healthy to return at Slammiversary, obviously with appendicitis stuff? It's interesting, but I think W. Morrissey wins this one, and I've been a big fan of how W. Morrissey has been booked so far in Impact, just as a complete hoss, a monster, and most importantly, we touched on this previously here on the channel, the work shoot he did last week on Impact Wrestling is one of the better interviews you're going to see in pro wrestling today. People will say that's hyperbole, you're overhyping it, Owen, all that kind of stuff. It's just that good. It's real, it's emotional, it's gritty. He's talking about a real-life event when he suffered a seizure backstage at the House of Hardcore show during his issues with addiction. It works. It was the perfect example of taking the reality of a scary situation, blurring the line between reality and fiction in pro wrestling, which is what pro wrestling was made for. And as a viewer at home, as an audience at home, you are captive. You are listening to this guy because you think it's real. You don't know whether or not he is actually working or if he's not working. And it was brilliant. So I think that presentation of W. Morrissey continues, and I think he wins that against all odds. Another match announced. Again, we've got pretty much an entire card announced last night for Against All Odds, is the Knockouts Tag Team Championships, and that is Fire and Flavor defending against Kimberly and Susan. Now, Fire and Flavor got their next challenges on this week's episode of Impact Wrestling on Access TV. Kira Hogan and Tasha Steelz faced Rachel Ellering and Jordan Grace in a Tag Team Championship match. This was a rematch, of course, from Under Siege, where Fire and Flavor once again became the Knockouts Tag Team Champions. Hogan and Steelz successfully retained their titles, isolating Jordan Grace, who they've pinned in multiple times over the past few months. Backstage later on, they visited Scott D'Amore's office and bragged about being two-time champions, how they're looking for competition, but there is none because they've beaten every other team. Scott D'Amore then informed them that he had two women present who wanted to step up and challenge Fire and Flavor, that being Susan and Kimberly. I think I would expect Fire and Flavor to win. I think they're probably destined, I would assume, to maybe be challenging the Iconics at Slammiversary. I think that might be the likely outcome of that's, of course, if the Iconics sign with Impact Wrestling. So I expect them to win here. Kimberly and Susan, frankly, all they do is argue and fight with each other, don't they? In recent weeks, every time they're presented on Impact Wrestling television. So I would assume that continues. Kind of the story is that obviously they're the henchwomen of Deonna Purrazzo. Maybe this is one of the beginning of the catalyst for them to continue to fight against each other, and we go to a situation where they're no longer Deonna Purrazzo's henchwomen. I don't know what that situation will be. I think Fire and Flavor retain though, and my hope is that eventually they face off against the Iconics, because the Iconics are made for the Impact Wrestling Knockouts Tag Team division. They are made for that division to be built around them and really elevate that division to the next level. So fingers crossed with that one. Finally, another match, speaking of Tag Team Championships, was announced for Against All Odds, as Violent by Design's first defense of the Impact Tag Team Championships takes place at the event. Eric Young's group, of course, captured the championships from David Finlay and Juice Robinson 2 weeks ago, utilizing Rhino's Call Your Shot trophy and taking advantage of a tired Finn Juice, who had just fought Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. On last night's episode of Impact Wrestling on Access TV, Dina was defeated by New Japan legend Satoshi Kojima, who was also scheduled to face his former All Japan Pro Wrestling adversary Joe Doring at Against All Odds. But backstage after the match, Eric Young said failure is something they can get past, but places the blame on the loss on Eddie Edwards, who came out and evened the odds when it looked like Violent by Design were preparing to interfere. Decay's Crazy Steve and Black Taurus confronted Violent by Design and said that there appears to be a flaw in the faction's design and that Dina will once again pay the price. Young didn't appreciate the way Steve, who of course he trained, is disrespecting him and his men. The Decay member then told Young to put some responsibility on the young disciple and have him defend the tag team championships at Against All Odds, and the challenge was accepted. So it looks like they're going by, I guess, the sort of the free bird rule when it comes to the tag team championships, which is smart because it involves people like Dina. I like the storyline development of Eric Young saying, you know, I trained you, Crazy Steve. I think that's something that they could play on. Possibly it could lead to Crazy Steve joining Violent by Design, another disciple, if you will, of Eric Young. I think Violent by Design stay. I think it's a way of Dina proving himself to Eric Young and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think the Decay win. I wouldn't even be surprised if the finish of the match, like I said, is Crazy Steve joining Violent by Design and joining the guy who trained him. I think that's... I wouldn't be surprised to see that outcome. I'm really excited to see Joe Doring versus Kojima. I think they're going to beat the ever-loving hell out of each other, and I just can't wait for that. I really can't. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Fans returning at Slammiversary and all the matches that have been announced so far for the Against All Odds. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.